ReefDudes is sponsored by Ecotech Marine and Bulk Reef Supply.
So your bags are packed and you're already going on vacation, but is your tank ready? What's going on, guys? Dem from ReefDudes. Today we are talking about prepping your tank for vacation. Now I'm heading out tomorrow, so this is kind of like a bit of an overview checklist of all the things I'm going through to make sure my tank's ready to survive without me. Now, the first kind of big consideration is whether or not you're going to have a tank sitter. In that case, do you have someone to feed the fish for you? If not, you got to look at something like an auto feeder. Now, thankfully, I have a house sitter that's also going to take care of feeding my tank frozen. So that part's covered, but the rest of it, we need to make sure the tank is ready. Now, starting out with dosing supplementation, I'm gonna guess a good chunk of you guys probably use kind of an auto doser. In that case, as long as your dosing's dialed in, you're fairly safe. One of the first things to check is how much space is in your reservoir, how long you're gonna be gone for, and will this last that duration. I'm fairly confident, the 10 days or so I'm gone, this will be enough. But I might mix up an extra batch and top it off just for good measure. The next big consideration is checking your gear. Is your auto top off working? If you're gonna be gone, is your auto top off reservoir big enough to fill the whole time you're gone, or do you need someone to refill it for you? In my case, I do have bins that auto refill themselves, so that part is covered. But if you're going away and you only have a small bin, maybe consider getting like a 10-gallon or 20-gallon aquarium to use as your auto top-off reservoir. Another big thing is your skimmer. So I technically will clean out all my skimmer cups the night before I leave and make sure they're good. Now, how long does it take your skimmer cup to fill up? Is it going to fill up while you're gone? Is your tank sitter going to do that? And if not, what are you going to do about it? So one tip that I normally do is I normally open up my skimmers a little bit more. So I lower the water level to make it more of a dry skim. This prevents the cup from filling up quite as fast. So if you look into it right now, it is fairly dark, so it's a fairly, drier skim. If it's really tea colored, that's a really wet skim. But by lowering the bubble tower inside of it, you're gonna make the bubbles have to work harder, and then it'll take longer for that cup to fill up. So we're gonna do that and make sure both our skimmers are empty and skimming a little drier than normal, just to make sure they'll last the duration. Now, if you're rocking a filter roller, how much is left on your roll? And is however much is there going to last you the duration that you're away? If not, it might be worth changing a roll early. And you can see I just tweaked the bubble tower, and you can see it's now below that line, where before it was up with the tower. So it's definitely going to work a lot harder now to get its way up into the top of the bubble tower. Now, if you're rocking filter socks, are they clean? Do they need some love? So these are another thing that I'm going to clean tonight, make sure they're nice and fresh. Now, if you have, the thick nylon socks, it might be worth swapping to some mesh socks so don't clog up quite as easily. I do use mesh socks on this tank, so I'll just give them a clean out first of all and make sure they're all good. And I've already tweaked the skimmer to be a little bit drier on this tank, but again, we'll clean it as well just for good measure. Dosing container has lots in it, so not too worried there. This tank, I also have the auto top off refilling itself, so again, that's taken care of. I do have an RODI unit tucked away on the side here that does take care of that. Now, another consideration on this tank is my Trident wastewater. How much is that going to hold? Definitely, it's only half full, so tons of capacity here. And checking your auto feeders, how much food is in there? Is that going to last while you're gone? Well, usually worth filling that up. Now, if you are using an auto feeder, don't swap to a new pellet or, make a bunch of tweaks right before you leave. Like, it's good to test for a couple days to make sure it's not overfeeding or it's feeding just the right amount. Now, it certainly doesn't hurt to do a big water change prior to leaving. I did one last week, brew container, so that kind of takes things over. I got a nice big RODI container, so that should last it. My saltwater tank is probably about 2/3 full, so I'm going to top this off tonight, and just for my auto water change to make sure it's nice and full and it doesn't run dry while on the way. I'll turn that one on while we're thinking about it, let the tank refill. Now, it also doesn't hurt to maintain some of your equipment like your return pumps and power heads. I wouldn't do this the day or two before. Do it a couple weeks ahead of time. Make sure everything's still functioning well just before. You don't want to make any changes right before you leave, just in case something buggers up and you're not around. And of course, having a friend or someone you can call that's into reefing never hurts if you need someone to come check up on your tank. But for the most part, if your tank's been running for a while, it's going to be fairly much in its groove. And as long as all your normal systems are operating, things are going to be just fine. I know some people actually put cameras on their tank when I leave. I actually just have some myself, just so I can see if, the socks or the skimmer or something's overflowing. Then I can turn it off if I needed to, or I can just check the status of things on the apex, and that kind of adds an extra peace of mind. And of course, if you have something like a Neptune Apex or a Hydros or a JHL, some kind of controller, it's going to allow you to monitor your tank parameters while you're away. You know, you see your elk drifting up, you turn off your doser, right? It gives you that little bit of a way to kind of tweak things from afar. You know, if I see my levels trending up or down, I can just tweak my doser and kind of get things back on track. So that's kind of my checklist of all the things I go over, you know, the day before I leave, just to make sure the tanks are happy. You know, make sure your dosing's not going to run out, make sure your skimmers aren't going to overflow, tweak it so it doesn't skim quite as wet so it runs longer. You know, clean those cups out the night before, clean those socks out the day before. Make sure your filter roller's not going to run out. Make sure your auto top-off container can withstand the duration that you're going to be gone. And if you're putting in a bigger one or changing something, make sure you use a siphon break. I had a buddy one time that he used like a 50-gallon barrel or whatever was beside his tank, but he didn't have a siphon break. So when he left and it kicked on the ATO for the first time, it just kept draining and draining and draining until the sump level equaled the barrel level, and it was millimeters from overflowing to the sump. Thankfully the tank was fine, but kind of a lesson learned, always use a siphon break. Make sure your auto feeders are topped off, and if you have someone looking after the tank, I mean, that is best. They can always reach out to you if there's an issue. And if you have an aquarium control or something else monitoring, it's another peace of mind. So if you guys are thinking about going away, you're about to leave like I am, you know, hopefully this helps you out, and just be prepared to make sure your tank can survive without you and have an amazing trip and come back to a thriving reef tank. All right, guys, as always, if you enjoyed this, be sure to hit that like button. If you're new, make sure you subscribe. I'll catch you guys in the next video.